That means keeping notes of everything.
Jeez. I can't believe it's been almost 2 years since my last misinformation video. Well, time to get up, dust myself off, and get back to work. Oh, but first, personas and suits are so overrated. Well, folks, it's been a hot second and a lot has happened since we last talked. Some good, some bad, but regardless, I hope you're doing alright out there. But enough with the formalities. Holy sh! I'm sure by now you've seen the re-uploaded video going around by some furry YouTuber that got struck off the website. If you haven't, consider yourself lucky. This Achilles Argyle character just appeared out of nowhere one day with probably one of the worst of hot takes for a debut video titled Why We Need Racism. Now, I'm still not 100% sure on this, but there's been a lot of debate as to whether or not this is a troll account. I ran a poll on Twitter to see what everyone thought, and it seems as though there's just as much confusion amongst everybody else as well, with both affirmative and negative sides being almost tied. One quick look at any still frame of the video shows how this could easily be bait. I mean, all the pieces are there. The furry avatar, the feet being front and center, the "Are you offended" mug. It all seems a bit too accurate just to be a coincidence. That being said though, bait or not, this video is absolutely and utterly vile. And I'm not just saying that because of the foot fetish. Because of that, I'm choosing to overlook the possibility just to address the points made in the video, because as horrible as it is, there are a lot of real people out there who think like this. Anyway, on with the show. So like I said, Achilles Argyle's debut video, Why We Need Racism, randomly appeared on April 20th of this year as the first video on the channel. Inevitably, it was taken down by YouTube after blowing up because of, well, I'm sure you can guess why. From there, re-uploads began circulating the site, along with Argyle providing a Google Drive alt hosting link on his Twitter. Quite honestly, too, it begins just as bad as you think. He opens up using the blank is bad and I don't support it, but blank opener.
Now, before you all grab your pitchforks and storm into the comments section over the title of the video alone, let me just say that of course racism is bad. I wouldn't make a 10-minute video defending something so obviously terrible. Generations have been ruined because of racism, and lives are still getting destroyed by it. However, I don't think we should be painting racism as entirely evil, because, well, there's a reason why people are racist.
Good lord, his volume and enunciation sound like my old videos. I mean, come on. Listen.
In reality, hard and soft sciences are merely a categorizing system that the different branches of science fall into. Natural sciences such as biology, chemistry, and astronomy are referred to as hard sciences, more concrete in the rules and understandings of how nature and the science around it works.
Like, how did I get any viewers sounding that stilted? I'm still not great at it, but I've definitely learned to put myself into it more and not be self-conscious while recording. For the most part. Also, in case you didn't notice the humongous elephant in the room, he has a sound effect for putting his nasty, stank goatman feet on the table.
Generations have been ruined because of racism, and lives are still getting destroyed by it. However, I don't think we should be painting racism as entirely evil.
Now, this is just a nitpick, as I know absolutely nothing about furry culture other than a few friends. But, like, I'm assuming his persona is a goat, judging by the horns? But everything else is off. The muzzle's shaped more like a dog's, the ears are too low on the head, and oh, by the way, goats don't have feet.
And that's not because people want to be bad, it's because there are objective benefits to being racist. And I don't think we should be discrediting these benefits.
Looking past that horribly inaccurate statement, I have to give just a quick little behind the scenes look into the kind of notes I have to take to deal with this shit. Why do his toes open like that? This dude's persona has more frames for his feet than my avatar has, period.
I don't think we should be discrediting these benefits with all this virtue signaling bullshit, because we are seriously reaching a low point in history without racism.
Okay, so he claims there's a lot of virtue signaling BS going on in terms of condemning racism. If you could kindly provide an example of this virtue signaling, as I normally request, that would be wonderful. And the claim that we're reaching a low point in history is such a painfully general statement. I don't understand what he means when he says history. He could be referring to social dynamics, technological advancement, societal construction and collapse, a bunch of different things. Just saying history as a general idea doesn't really give your audience, no matter which side they're on, a good understanding of what this point is specifically critiquing.
A lot of people don't know this, but racism is actually the natural state for a lot of people, and has been for most of history. By forming exclusive groups, people are able to be amongst like-minded individuals, and the people infight significantly less. This is because people who think the same don't often come into conflict. Grouping together also provides a sense of pride. I mean, think about it. If you're surrounded by people like you, that think like you, and most importantly look like you, then you feel like you belong. That's a good feeling.
See, what he's just described there, as we can all tell, is an echo chamber, and what we all know as well is it's usually a bad thing. When people lock themselves into specific like-minded groups, it brews vitriol and dislike for anyone who may think differently from them. And when that hatred is amplified by easy-to-detect things like appearance rather than just ideas, it can become even more dangerous as it's easy to weed out the ones who the group believes quote-unquote do not belong. And while grouping up with similar folks may create a sense of pride, that pride can be blinding towards the faults of the group as well. It's honestly kinda hard to simply explain how these dynamics would work, as all people are individuals, no matter how similar-minded they are, so the dynamic for each group would be different. The size of the group also has an effect. A friend group of 4 or 5 people may have similar thoughts and beliefs, but such a small pack allows each individual to still express themselves on a personal level. When you get larger groups, it eventually becomes harder for an individual to express themselves on a level simply outside of echoing the ideas and thoughts of the general group. And circling back a bit further in his argument, he states that being racist was the natural state of humanity for a good portion of our history. And yes, that is true for a lot of countries throughout the course of human history, but it's not as prevalent anymore because most people have accepted that it's bad and dehumanizing. It's just as cliche as the intro, using the "it was acceptable in the past so it must be okay" point of view, and it holds zero ground. Just because something was that way for most of history doesn't mean it's the right thing. For a lot of developing civilizations throughout history, people didn't get married for love. Or should we go back to not using toilets because in the grand scheme of human history, they've only existed for 1/10,000th% of our time on the planet? No, I don't think so.
Segregation is an objective good in its utility because it leads to the formation of ethnostates, and ethnostates are historically proven to last longer than states that embrace polyethnicity.
Historically, most ethnostates only existed for a short period of time in the grand scheme of a nation, because after they were established, they would usually quickly open up trade routes to welcome in foreign exchange and people. Just because one ethnicity or race dominates a particular location doesn't mean that it's an ethnostate. The term ethnostate doesn't actually quite have a set definition, as it's only gained popularity in recent years, usually describing Western, often more radical ideas of the general idea of ethnic nationalism. Ethnic nationalism differs as it simply refers to a nation or nationality being defined usually by a single ethnic group. Yet even this is more of a Western ideal. Outside of North America and parts of Europe, ethnic nationalism is thought of sort of as an extended family tree of sorts, which is usually included in countries' repatriation laws. Examples of this can be seen in countries like Greece and Germany, where citizenship can be attained in the country by anyone of Grecian or German descent. But outside of this, even those countries that welcome back these natural-born citizens can be diverse in the races and cultures that live there. Of course, even ethnic nationalism comes with a slew of issues, but that's not my topic to talk about in substitution for other countries.
I mean, look at China. They have over 5,000 years of history because they are discriminatory and wary of other races, while also cooperating with their own. As such, the Chinese have been able to survive for as long as they have. China is an ethnostate.
If there is one strong example of the American view of ethnostates, it would probably be China. But there are plenty of non-Chinese folks that live in the country too. And let me tell you, most of them sure as hell ain't happy about the racism.
And referring to what I said earlier, an ethnostate with a racist population provides a sense of national pride and identity, and thus prevents infighting and strengthens the country.
Oh, yeah, because, the Chinese government's never had political infighting before.
When you work, create, and fight, you are doing so for the betterment of the people you care about, your own people, a distinct race. On a side note, this is why Kurdistan should not be a real country. It doesn't deserve to be one. Kurds say they need independence, but the difference between the Kurds and the Turks is entirely cultural and not racially related at all. If the Kurds were to just accept their racial disposition, then they would be a united state.
Finally, I get to be the actually guy again. Okay, let's take a look at the concept of an ethnostate again. According to Argyle, an ethnostate is a location defined by its ethnicity, preferably a single dominating one. But that's where he screws up. Throughout his argument so far, he conflates ethnicity with race, already making his view of an ethnostate incorrect on a technical level. Race is usually defined by biological indicators like certain physical traits including skin color. Ethnicity, on the other hand, is defined by shared cultural practices and tradition. Hence, Kurdistan should be a real country under his definition because the Kurdish people share a cultural identity that forms their ethnicity. Woo! Feels good to do that again.
Take Osama bin Laden in the War on Terror, for example. People rallied behind the tangible goal of killing Osama bin Laden, and everything was great. But once he was gone, suddenly the enemy was terrorism itself. Not any one group or person. It could have been anyone. What were we supposed to do then? It's not like we can go and just shoot terrorism dead.
I'm not exactly sure where you've been living, Achilles, but there was certainly perceived threats after bin Laden was killed. I mean, Al-Qaeda didn't just disappear, and there's a little terrorist organization you may have heard of, relatively unknown, ISIS. Yeah, it was never on the news, so you probably didn't know.
This is why we need people like Osama bin Laden, and groups like Muslims, and why we need to hate them.
No, we do not, my good goatman.
The politically correct may preach that globalization is the only way things should be, but a divided world gives states and people true independence, and thus responsibility for our own mistakes and development.
A divided world also creates paranoia, hatred, malice, and general distrust on top of— oh god, what is that?
I know I personally feel that certain races contribute significantly less than others to our culture, such as Mexicans and Indians, and the best way to avoid this is simply to divide people by race. Suddenly, there would be no more races writing on the achievements of others.
I know I need to address that, but I'm not the only one seeing this, right? This stank cloud? Anyway, roll the clip again. Sorry, I'm just gonna censor that for our own good.
I know I personally feel that certain races contribute significantly less than others to our culture, such as Mexicans and Indians, and the best way to avoid this is simply to divide people by race.
Right. Okay. What on earth are you going on about? They don't contribute to our culture? First, they have their own cultures that have developed to be just as rich as any other culture. Moreover, they're not obligated to contribute to our culture just because some of them live in the same country. Besides, haven't you ever heard of fusion cuisine? That alone is an amazing contribution in my book.
The best way to avoid this is simply to divide people by race. Suddenly, there would be no more races writing on the achievements of others, or even the mere perception that some group was leeching off of our own hard work.
If no other group borrowed or built upon the work of others, the world would essentially be playing a real-life game of civilization. Byzantine Empire's over here developing cybernetics, while Australians are still struggling to develop math.
Our achievements can be credited only to ourselves. Racism puts...
Thank God he moved them off the desk.
When you're constantly critical of another race's actions, you're going to call them out on it at any chance you can get. This is far preferable to the alternative of being blindly accepting of all of a race's mistakes, something we do so much in today's political climate.
If the world was segregated from one another by race, I don't really see why anyone would want to judge another race's actions. If I'm taught not to interact with or do anything with another group, why would I even bother getting involved in their business? My critiquing of them isn't going to do anything because I'm supposed to keep to myself.
blind acceptance and aid of other countries is actively screwing us over. I mean, Africa is leeching resources from the first world, all because some liberal politician sees that their skin color is dark and takes pity on them. So they funnel food and water to them, instead of the hardworking men, women, and children in their own country. Shouldn't Africa be left to their own devices to figure it out for themselves?
Humanitarian aid to other countries isn't based off the color of their skin. I think something like that is pretty easy to discern even if you are someone who thinks like Argyle. It's pretty obvious that we give to and aid other countries that are considered third world or poor because it improves the quality of living. They're given the resources they may otherwise be living without, like medical care and clean water.
In my opinion, the worst offender of all is India. They're pumping CO2 into the world like it's a competition. They're third in the world in terms of CO2 emissions. You know why? It's because they have a culture practically based entirely around being unhygienic.
Bringing up negative facts doesn't disguise underlying racism. Statistically, yes, India is the third worst country when it comes to CO2 emissions. But guess what? I'm sure you'll never guess who's ahead of them. Yeah. The United States, of course, is the second largest producer of CO2 in the world, and on top of that, India produces half of what the US does on an annual basis. Aside from his CO2 point, I'm not even giving him time to further state anything as he goes on to ramble off different stereotypes about Indian people. The notion that the country is unhygienic is largely outdated, and they've been making amends to that issue in the past decade, with the most recent being a partnership between US aid and the Indian government providing safe, easy access sanitary areas and restrooms.
But all of these people get a pass with the wave of a hand because they're minorities and they're being marginalized. And don't even get me started on black crime statistics. Admittedly, white people do have their own shortcomings too, though they are less drastic than other races. They've only ruined pizza and Italian carbonara, which weren't too good to begin with, so not much loss there.
His character absolutely has to be bait. I mean, at this point, no sane person would look at the history of white people and say, we've done pretty okay for ourselves. And the best part, we've never made mistakes.
If you've stuck with me thus far, then I need you to bear with me again, as I realize what I'm about to say may sound bad. Nevertheless, I have to say this. Slavery is good. Every great civilization is built on the shoulders of disposable workforce, and it's even better if this workforce is perceived as having less rights than a regular citizen.
Oh, okay, so this whole thing was just a backdoor pilot for slavery, huh? How on earth did I not see that coming? Okay. Anyway, he goes on to rant about bringing back slavery for a few minutes. Ultimately, this whole argument is just him filleting the concept of America and white people being better than other races, which is why I'm not even giving him a chance to speak again in this portion. I obviously never try to get super political, but I will say this. As an American citizen, I wholeheartedly think that the country is self-centered and selfish trash. Patriotism can be great for unifying groups of people, but when taken too far, it can do the exact opposite. The patriotic notion of America being the greatest country to ever exist is complete and utter bull until we accept everyone as individuals, as humans, no matter how different we may be from one another. I know this may sound preachy and cheesy, but damn it pisses me off. I don't care about countries and patriotism. What I care about is the people and the cultures, the good that comes from these places and what they can do for one another. But I'll stop with the preachy, lovey-dovey bullshit for now. On a lighter note, I'd like to just note how his foot stank is gone now, depriving us of possibly one of the best and worst images of the year, a furry foot fetishist covering up photos of slaves with his stank feet while talking about how slavery is good.
We need slavery. We need a group of people who are expendable for manual labor. China has been doing this with their own people, and they've become a global superpower from absolutely nothing. Imagine how powerful we could be if we took advantage of minorities and the racially inferior.
And there it is, folks. I think it's about time that we end this. Thank you all for tuning in, and hey, stop the clip. Hey, stop the clip.
So what about the other side of things?
Wait, no. You don't get the right to use persona music. Bad Goatman.
Don't lie to yourself neither. Being racist feels good. You're repressing your inner hatred by refusing to be racist, by refusing to generalize a race into one offensive caricature. But really, deep in your subconscious, you know that that's what they really are. You can't live without strife nor negativity. You need those elements of human life to balance yourself. Accept it. Racism is chaos, and our minds are just as chaotic as it if we condemn racism deep down.
Bro, my mind is chaotic whether I condemned racism or not.
The world that the left strives for is a non-existent realm of perfect euphoria, something that literally cannot exist. And there is only one way it can exist, and let me tell you, it can only exist if we are not in it.
I don't even have the patience to unpack how little that makes sense. I think we're done here, man. He rambles on for a bit more like we've already seen, but it's needless filler to pad out his conclusion because he apparently doesn't know how to write a good persuasive argument. His last pertinent point is that thinking the way spreads the mindset. In other words, Stinky Furry Goatman is going to make everyone racist again. Get this dude off my screen. I'm sure you can tell what I mean about it possibly being bait. There are so many different points that we've heard brought up time and time again, yet even if it is bait, like I said, there are people out there who sincerely think like this, so I believe it's important to address it. Somehow, Argyle already stands at over 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, which hurts my heart and my head to even think about, but I'm pretty sure he's been garnering more criticism than praise, so that's at least a good thing. The only video left on his channel right now, since the one that we just discussed got taken down, is a video essay on VTubers, so he certainly knows how to hit the tonal whiplash. He also mentions in the VTuber video description that his artist is refusing commissions from him anymore, which I find all too entertaining. So, if you learn any lesson from this, I guess it would be, don't be racist, or even furries won't take your money.